So we have to first understand what it means when people use the term race. So the term race was created obviously in Europe. It's a social construct where one group of people with a very visible physical feature, which is their skin color, determined who they were and their value, I guess, in this world. But if we look at it, skin color is just a genetic feature, right? If you have dark parents, you'll come out dark. If you have light parents, you'll come out light. If you have one dark parent, one light parent, you might come out a variation of the two. And it doesn't really mean who you are. It doesn't define your value, your worth, your intellect. Now, today, when the word whiteness or race is being used, it's usually trying to refer to origins. So if someone is white, their origin is from Europe. They're Europeans, they're descendants from Europeans that came from Europe and that either went to South Africa or they went to Australia or they went to America or to Canada. They displaced themselves from mainland Europe and went elsewhere. So that's what the word white means. So the reason why a lot of people in this world try and call Jews white is either they're trying to disconnect their association and connection to the Jewish people, to the land of Israel, being indigenous to that land, and trying to claim that they're from Europe, so they should go back to Europe. Actually, it's a very popular thing that wherever Jews are, they tell them to go back to somewhere else. And so now that a lot of Jews are coming back to Israel, they're telling them go back to Europe, and they're trying to disconnect that connection from Israel to the Jewish people, wherever they were displaced. But a problem is that even a lot of Jews start seeing themselves from Europe, or even a lot of Jews from North Africa, like my family who had an experience in Morocco, and before that were kicked out from Spain, and before that were kicked out from Italy, and before that were kicked out from Judea. But we tend to not understand that these displacements were experiences, and definitely something that we learned along the way, that we gained stuff along the way. You know, there's a lot of richness that came from Sephardic culture, that came from Ashkenazi culture, that came from Mizrahi culture, which are Jews that were displaced into different pockets in different regions of the world. But we have to understand that that was an experience, and that's not where our origins are. So it's a problem when we call Jews white, because Jews do not come from Europe. And we're, again, not talking about the pigmentation of their skin, whether you are lighter or not lighter, or the level of sunscreen that you need when you go to the beach. What we're talking about when people call Jews white, they're saying that they come from this European people that are, one, colonizers of the world, and two, originate in Europe and should belong to Europe. So it's very dangerous actually to consider Jews as white. And in fact, if you look at it throughout history, we were never white. Even in America, you had sign that would say, in Jim Crow in the South, you would have no N-word, no dogs, no Jews. And you had a lot of signs like that. So even in America, oftentimes we were not treated as white people. Or in Europe, what was the Holocaust? That happened in my grandparents' generation. My grandparents grew up as survivors of the Holocaust, hiding in attics. And why were they killed? Because they were not white. They were not part of the Aryan race. They were Jews. They were the other. They came from the Middle East. And so we were constantly attacked and targeted for not being white. And I don't understand why within 2 generations, all of a sudden, we're trying to assimilate to this European white culture that we're not a part of. Now, I have no problem. I think there's a lot of even richness within white European culture, right? Medicine, technology, democracy, a lot of great things that came in this world came from Europe. But there's a lot of also darkness, like you have in every society. But we have to understand that as Jews, we are not white. Our ethnicity, if you would say, is Semitic, Semites, right? It comes from the word Shem, which was one of the descendants that we believe we come from, but that all Middle Easterns come from. So Arabs are also Semites, and Kurds and Coptics and Yazidis and Assyrians and Armenians and all these sorts of people that come from this Middle Eastern region, their ethnicity really is being Semitic and not white or black or things that those are more races that was constructed in order to differentiate people based on their skin color, genetic features, and not based on their culture or their values or their origins. Jews have always come in many different colors. Even in the Torah, which if you believe it or not, it's part of our culture story. In the Bible, the wife of Moses, Tzipporah, was actually very dark, even one would say black. So there are many Jews of many different colors throughout history. There are Ethiopian Jews that are black. There are Bnei Menashe Jews that are, Asian looking, have Asian features from that region of Northeast India. There are Jews that experienced the past 2,000 years of history in Europe. There are Jews that went to the Middle East, like places like Persia or what is today Iran. There are Jews that went to North Africa. So you have all these different colors that have been in Jewish history, not only post the expulsion of Jews 2,000 years ago, but even before that, Jews always came in many different colors. Now, it's important to understand that many of the first world countries, like America and like Europe, their experience of Jews is usually Ashkenazi Jews, and Ashkenazi Jews are actually the Jewish population that is the lightest in skin tone, and so their experience is usually those Jews have lighter skin tone. This means that all Jews are the same color, or all Jews look the same, right? And there's a lot of stereotypes that came from those regions, like Jews are supposed to have big noses, Jews are supposed to look like this, which is actually just, an anti-Semitic, imposition of the image of what Jews are supposed to look like. But it's important to also understand that if we look deeper than just the appearance that one has on their skin color, and we look into the genetic history behind, even, let's take the pocket of Jews that are Ashkenazi Jews, your Eastern European Jews, and we do a research, their genes and their DNA is actually more closely related to Arabs in the Middle East than it is to white Europeans. So we actually can trace back their genes that had come from the land of Judea, from the Middle East, and that they were displaced and have just been living for the past 2,000 years in Europe.